Today on Inside Utah Politics, the point of the mountain, the development partner unveiled for Phase 1, the latest on the multi-billion-dollar project and where it goes from here. And confusion following the overturning of Roe v. Wade. National lawmakers move to ensure access to contraception.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It is time to go Inside Utah Politics. We do begin this morning with Alan Matheson. He is with the Point of the Mountain Land Authority, here to discuss the very latest on the development in Draper. Alan, welcome back to the show. We've been following along as the different phases come about. It's great to have you back on for another update.
It's good to be here. Appreciate it.
Before we get into the newest developments, let's first talk about the Point of the Mountain development. Just a quick summary. What is it? What it's all about?
Well, I think most people recognize and have heard that the existing prison in Draper will be moved in the near future. That'll open up 600 acres of land owned by the state, the people of Utah, and we're planning a future-focused innovation community at the Point. That's what we're calling this area.
Okay. Big developments during the week in the announcement of a development partner. This has been a process that's been going on for quite a while. We'll dig into more on that in just a second. But first, start off with who was selected and why.
Well, it's exciting for us to be focusing now on starting to get to implementation. We've worked with the public on visioning for the site, doing some of the planning, and now we're working on actually making it happen. And the partners who are going to help us do that is a team called Innovation Point Partners, which includes Lincoln Development Partners, a national well-known developer, as well as some local partners, Wadsworth Development and Colmena Development.
And during this process, how many different partners submitted bids for this?
You know, we reached out nationally and really tried to get a good distribution of some of the top firms, and that's what happened. We had 9 teams that applied in December, went through a very rigorous process, and in fact I think those teams are exhausted after what we've put them through. But it narrowed the field down to 3 finalists in March, had a number of meetings with them, workshops, sharing ideas, and they submitted their final proposals in June, and we've made the selection now.
So what was it about that proposal that rose to the top in the committee's mind?
Well, I'll first say absolutely outstanding teams. All of them we thought could have done the job well, but this team had a little better financial package that allowed it to provide better returns for the state over the long term. They had good experience in large mixed-use public-private partnerships, and we thought that some of their ideas for planning the site and implementing even beyond some of the enhancements we were looking for were really appealing.
We've been showing some images as we've been discussing this, but you look at it and it looks kind of energetic and exciting when you take a look at some of the finished product. Here we go again with some more. Mixed use. We're talking commercial, residential, everything right in this one location.
That's right, and we're starting with Phase 1, as I said, which is a good place to start, and we're going to call it the hub. And in that area, we're going to have office, residential, retail, commercial, there will be entertainment. It'll be kind of a community unto itself. Central Park, part of the River to Range Parkway, and I think a place that people will want to be and gather and enjoy spending time.
The idea here is that someone could live there and be able to get everything right within their own neighborhood.
That's right. Now this site is ideally situated to be what they call a 15-minute community, meaning you can access the day-to-day needs of your life within a 15-minute walk. And that's certainly going to be the case in this Phase 1. Real emphasis on transit access, on walkability, on mobility solutions that get people out of their cars. And I think that'll certainly help our air quality. It also is nice for convenience that you can live and work close by.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I don't live too far from the location, and it's fascinating to think of what it's going to look like by the time this is all done. During the process, there was this key visions elements that were really considered. Don't really have time to get through all of them, but just to name a few: community, transit, which you've already mentioned, economic opportunity, innovation. What role did that play in the process of picking the right partner for this project?
You know, those key vision elements came directly from public input. Those were the things that the public told us they most wanted at the site. And so we looked very closely for partners that would deliver an innovation campus, a way that we can help solve challenges here, that really looked at sustainability. How can we generate fewer emissions and use less water and less energy? How can we make sure that we're coordinating with surrounding communities and continuing to listen to the public?
Let's talk about timeline now. Obviously, you start with phase 1 as mentioned, but there's still a operational prison on the property right now. When will we start to see that come down?
You know, we expect that this fall we'll start demolition on the site.
Okay.
And that'll wrap up early next year. We expect that you'll see some of the infrastructure going in the spring of next year, and by the end of 2024, we hope to see the buildings going up, coming out of the ground. It's exciting to get to this point. There are a lot of issues with the economy that we have to deal with,
Sure.
but we want to move this ahead and achieve the vision that we promised to the community.
You know, you just bring up something that I didn't even think about. When you take a look at inflation that we're experiencing right now, how is that impacting the process?
You know, like any development or anything in the economy, we have to look at what inflation is doing, what the demand for different types of use are. And so all of that we're monitoring very closely. We found that there's a lot of interest in this project, not just in the country, but around the world. So we think that there will be continuing demand and excitement to be part of the point.
Okay, so you mentioned we might start to see buildings go up the end of 2024. How long will this process go out? How many phases will there be, and how long will construction be going on?
We anticipate that the first phase will be built out probably in about 2033 to 2035, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And then future phases, of course, will depend on demand in the market, but it could be a 20-year process. I would expect that the demand that we're hearing about will drive it faster.
Yeah. Mayor Troy Walker has been a big part of this process. Yeah. Talk about the role the city plays in all of this and how the city is viewing it.
We've loved working with Draper. They've been outstanding partners, and the mayor's on our board and has been a real leader. This is part of Draper, although it's all state-owned land. And so while we have land use authority, we understand that we've got to be great neighbors and have worked really collaboratively with the city. They've been supportive, providing resources. We want to make sure that whatever we do is consistent with their standards so that we can have kind of a seamless transition.
As the public continues to watch this process unfold, one that you've said is going to be maybe a couple of decades, but several years for sure, how can they stay engaged and involved and on top of what is happening?
You know, we've had a lot of public input. Over 10,000 Utahns have participated, and that's not over. They'll continue to do it. You can go to our website, thepointutah.org, and more immediately, we think that this site needs to have a defining iconic feature. And that's something we've heard from the public. We've started a survey to get input on what that feature ought to be that will help define this site and help define Utah. And again, you can find that on the website.
Okay, stay tuned, as we say, right?
That's right.
In the business. Okay, Alan, fascinating, exciting to get to this point. I remember the first time we had you on the show, it was kind of hard to visualize, but now it's all starting to come together. So thanks so much for the update, and we'll be checking in with you again soon, I'm sure.
Look forward to it.
All right, thanks so much. Coming up, for the second time, a judge here in Utah putting the abortion trigger law on hold once again, this time granting a preliminary injunction. Our panel is going to be debating that a little bit later. But first, a stunning new view of the universe. A look at the first images from the James Webb Space Telescope after the break. Now that states are legally able to ban abortion, Democratic lawmakers are turning their attention to protecting access to birth control nationwide. Washington correspondent Alexander Lamone reports those lawmakers say states could ban contraceptives next.
Democratic lawmakers say Republican state legislatures won't stop with banning abortion.
I'm not confident that that women are going to be able to get the services, the family planning services, and the contraceptive services that they need.
That's why Representatives Mike Thompson and Pramila Jayapal introduced a bill to ensure access to contraception nationwide.
We're talking about IUDs, condoms, emergency contraception.
The bill would prohibit state and local governments from taking any action to block access to contraceptives, including through Medicaid programs. Last year, Republicans in Missouri tried to block their state Medicaid program from covering certain forms of contraception.
There's 5 of them that we know can destroy human life.
Missouri Republicans are poised to try again this year. Democrats say blocking contraceptives from Medicaid programs is effectively a ban for low-income women who rely on the program. And state bans on abortion from the moment of conception will also result in de facto bans on some forms of contraception. That's why Congressman Thompson is urging Congress to take immediate action
to ensure that this bill is passed and signed into law as soon as possible.
In Washington, Alexandra Limon.
Turning now to those stunning images from the James Webb Telescope made possible by a partnership between NASA and other international space agencies. Scientists hoping the nearly $10 billion telescope will help them get closer to answer the question of whether there is life out there in space. ABC's Morgan Norwood has more.
We can now see in high definition what was happening in the universe billions of years ago. NASA releasing more images from the James Webb Telescope, full of cosmic beauty, showing a giant gaseous planet outside of our solar system, and 2 images of dying stars. Also, a cluster of thousands of galaxies dancing around each other.
We might be seeing some of the very first stars and galaxies to form in this image. We need to, download the data and start, doing the precise measurements and figure it out. And that's what we're all eager to do.
The nearly $10 billion telescope peering into the universe, deeper than humanity has ever seen. The use of infrared light spectrum allows the telescope to see through cosmic dust.
Today, for the first time, we're seeing brand new stars that were previously completely hidden from our view. You sort of get this sense of depth and texture from this new data.
But as marvelous as the discovery is, it really is just the beginning. This Webb telescope will help scientists study the earliest galaxies, how our solar system formed, and if there's life on other planets.
As an international collaboration, this telescope embodies how America leads the world, not by the example of our power, but the power of our example. A partnership with others. It symbolizes the relentless spirit of American ingenuity.
And according to NASA, the Webb telescope is only expected to last about 10 years, but now has enough fuel capacity to operate much longer. Morgan Norwood, ABC News, Los Angeles.
Coming up, President Biden's approval rating continues to slip. The latest numbers and what our panel is saying about it. Time now to debate some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have former state senator Scott Howell and former Speaker of the House Greg Hughes. Gentlemen, great to have both of you on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
Let's start off with the latest on abortion rights here in the state of Utah. For the second time, a judge putting a hold on the trigger law here in our state, granting a preliminary injunction. So that means it will stay in place until this goes up to the Utah Supreme Court. Greg, let's start with you. What do you make of the ruling?
I don't understand it. I think that the Supreme Court, our U.S. Supreme Court, was clear that this is a state's issue, that the state legislatures of every state are going to grapple with these issues and come with listening to constituents and coming up with laws framed around access to abortion. And that process has happened in our state. We had a trigger law in anticipation if Roe v. Wade were ever thrown out. And so I don't understand what there is left to discuss. I think that's going to be the debate or the process in every state. And every law that you have doesn't stay unchanged. I mean, there can certainly be amendments in a legislative session, but for the judiciary to step in, I don't understand their role at this time.
Okay, we'll get into potential amendments in just a minute, but first, Scott, let's turn to you. What do you make of the judge's ruling on this preliminary injunction?
Well, I think it was a wise decision on behalf of Judge Stone. I think he carefully studied the issue, and his exact words was it could do irreparable damage and harm to all the women who found themselves in this situation at this very short time. So I think he made a wise decision. I think it's one that the Supreme Court will now have the time to, the Utah Supreme Court will have the time to really evaluate it, and I think that this has to be methodical, and it has to be very thought out in such an important decision as when Roe was overturned. So I agree with him. I think he made a good decision.
I want to point out one thing. Utah's 18-week ban does remain in place, so currently that is the law of the state of Utah. Scott, I want to stick with you. If you take a look at this trigger law and potentially possible amendments down the road, where would you like to see that go?
Well, I think we have to take public safety out of the picture. I'm concerned about the teenage girl that had an encounter with Uncle Harry, and how does she have the courage to go to public safety and say, hey, this is one of my family members. I am concerned about rape and the consequences of the humiliation that goes through an investigation, coming into court and saying which man did that. I wish that piece of the law was not in there. I love that they put in what the faith, the LDS Church teaches about abortion in the case of rape, incest, health and life of the mother, and extreme fetal deformities, after careful consideration with your physician and ecclesiastical leaders. But it doesn't say anything about you have to go to public safety to get this. And I think that puts a big burden on public safety to go out and start investigating a rape to the degree that they have to, and the forensics that go in with that. I just don't think that's, I think we have enough challenges in the making a very challenging decision about abortion.
Greg, do you see any room for amendments to the trigger law down the road?
Well, in terms of if a crime has been committed, I don't think that we should ever lament that those crimes need to be reported, as messy as it might be or as difficult as it might be. We cannot be okay with children being sexually abused. And if something like that has happened, there ought to be incentives or even requirements that we do everything we can to make sure that that doesn't happen and that justice is served. I don't see that as problematic. I think that's a pretty important provision. What I'd like to see in future laws are that it takes, as long as the rape and incest and life of the mother puts the decision tree solely at a woman's right and choice of whether to engage in intimacy or not. If a woman has been a victim of a crime, or her life is at stake and was not aware of it, those decisions have never been made. So I think that those are important provisions. What I'd like to see further are that men are financially and legally responsible for these pregnancies. That this isn't just a one person's, it took two, and it should take two to be dealing with this issue. Mm-hmm. And men should be financially and legally responsible for the care, either be adoption or whatever happen. There should be stronger laws, I think, making sure that men have that responsibility.
I completely agree with Greg on that issue, by the way, and both of us being former legislators, the legislature now has a responsibility to be much more sensitive to the needs of a child in daycare and all the things that are associated when you do have children. And I think Greg's point is really well taken about the responsibility of the other half of that 50% of creating a pregnancy. So I think that the legislature is really going to have to step up to the plate. They're going to have to invest some money. And traditionally, we haven't put a lot of money into those resources. But now I think it's probably time that we move forward, and the burden is going to be back on our former colleagues.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to move on to another topic. A recent poll, a couple of them actually, but I'm going to focus in on one from the New York Times, showing that President Biden's approval rating has now slipped to 33%. Greg, your thoughts on that?
Happiest man in the world right now is Jimmy Carter. He has finally passed the baton as the most incompetent president we've ever had, one-termer probably. When you see inflation, and numbers just came out this week showing a 40-year high, when you see gasoline prices over $5 a gallon, when you see a border that doesn't exist so that drug trafficking and human trafficking is happening, 56 people died in a truck that was illegally smuggled across, and they baked to death inside there, a horrific crime that I don't see as much media attention as I think it deserves. There's just so much chaos right now. And I think those poll numbers reflect that. And I think that if you go back in time and look where poll numbers would look like this again, it was these kitchen table issues that are harming people. When you see inflation go up, understand that's a tax on every middle class, working, poor, everybody in America. That makes up most of America. They're seeing the impact, the detrimental impact of what's happening, and printing more money is not going to be the answer.
Scott, you have been a longtime supporter of the president. You were the contact here for his campaign here in the state of Utah. You were a guest of his at the White House over the 4th of July.
Wow.
One thing that these polls are showing is that even his own, the Democratic Party, are starting to sour on him.
Well, just to answer right from the very beginning, isn't it nice to wake up in the morning without a tweet to find out that we're going to bomb somebody in North Korea or we're going to do this or that? And what a horrible time to be the President of the United States. Greg is right on all those things, the inflation and the price of gasoline. But one thing that is out of this equation is COVID and the supply chain and all the things that COVID has done to change the world. With President Biden, I think that his biggest challenge right now is helping the American people to understand that the price that you pay for gasoline is not anything that the government can do. It's what oil companies are doing. And heck yes, those oil companies for a year and a half, when gas was down to almost $1.89 here in Utah, when there was demand came up and all of a sudden people started driving again, of course they're going to take advantage of it. We live in a capitalist society. I think on inflation, I think for that COVID, I blame it back, a lot of that back on that, is the supply chain was so low. They laid off workers, people left the industries, they weren't interested in working in that anymore. So what a terrible time to be the President of the United States.
Okay,
but there's one thing, just real quick, on that poll, the Democrats, the very, very far left Democrats, drove a lot of that poll in not supporting the president to even be more out of the centrist population.
Okay, that's a true point. But I've made this point as well. And Greg, I know you would argue a lot of what Scott just said, but we can sit here and argue this until we're blue in the face. But one thing is clear that you can argue, and that is, to both of you, that the American people do blame the president for this. Only 13% approve of the way he's handling the economy. The economy always the main driver when it comes to an election. So Greg, how is this going to impact the midterms coming up?
The reason you're seeing that is you cannot fool the American people. You can't have a campaign when you run for president that says, I'm going to end oil and gas leases on federal land. Offshore drilling is going to be done. We're going to get rid of this extraction industry for the purpose of climate change or the threat of climate change. And when you see those issues roll out, when you cancel the Keystone Pipeline, when you get your oil or gas lease, but then you can't get the permit from the EPA to even drill, these are issues that we were energy independent as a country not long ago, and now we're begging countries like Iran, Dubai, we're asking the Middle East for oil. We are in a position now, and I think the American people are watching it, that's so starkly different than where we were not that long ago, that the idea that this is all the fault of either Russia or COVID, I don't think it rings true.
Okay,
because I don't think it is true.
I only have about 20 seconds left, Scott, so I want to again ask you the question. That's how it's viewed by the American people. What impact will it have on the election?
It's going to have a major impact on the election. I think the redeeming factor might be Roe v. Wade or the Dobbs decision, where you might see more activist Republican women who have a big concern about that come out and vote, but it's dramatic.
Okay, gentlemen, I wish I had more time, but it goes by quick. I appreciate your
You
insight.
just go too fast. You need to make this a longer show.
Yeah,
Really.
I'm voting for that.
Hey, maybe you guys could sponsor
We'd be
the next
happy
half
to.
hour. All right. Hey, appreciate you being here. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break. We leave you now with a look at what's on the radar in the world of politics. Summer recess is coming up for Congress. It begins for the House on Monday, August 1st. The Senate will begin recess a week later on Monday, August 8th. The general election is Tuesday, November 8th. Make sure to connect with me on social media. I'd like to know what you think of this show and other issues that are important to you. Thanks so much for making us part of your Sunday morning. We hope to see you again next week as we go inside Utah politics.